We're live?
We're live.
All right. Let me welcome for those that are just coming in now. Just trying to pull the stream up on
Who
my
wants to
end.
put
Oh,
money
here.
on CIA being the first comment?
Oh, that's funny.
It's not no
Okay,
comment
hold on a
yet,
sec.
but they like to be first.
Yeah, I'm just gonna tweet out the live link.
Oh, it wasn't. Hey,
What would
SCP.
happen?
It wasn't
Oh.
CIA. I thought it would be CIA first, but it was not.
Oh. Hold on a second. We'll let some more people get in. I'll put it into the and then put it on my Instagram and then hey, what's going on, everybody? Let me just refresh my thing. Oh, here we go. We got about, oh, nice. We got about 20, 23 people.
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on, Joel? Um, Trina, what's going on? SCP, what's happening? Ani, what's going on, brother? Super Swagger, what's happening? Thank you so much. Blue Americas, I appreciate that a lot. I'm just gonna put out on promote the stream on Instagram, and then we will get going. We have with us today a great friend of the show, partner Nils. He'll be skimming through the comments and stuff like that. And I think a lot of you have seen him in the comments before. For those that are members on Patreon, you've seen him before. This is gonna be a fun one because we got a nice expose, at least in my opinion, an expose of the way in which World War II or the events from World War II onward allegedly went down. So let's I guess delve into that and see what's going on. So oh, Trina, yeah, it is usually shadow banned, which is why, again, if you notice too, a lot more people used to come into the lives initially before compared to now. It's simply because of the shadow ban. So
Yeah, they're just not getting
um
told.
yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly what it is. So, you know what? Let's delve into it. It's only oh yeah, we only went live like 2, 3 minutes ago. So, but yeah, we got about just over 30 people in here. So let's start this up. Okay, so Eisenhower and the plan. Now, what's interesting about this expose, guys, is that there's actually quite a few things within this sort of timeline that I fundamentally disagree with. We'll take some breaks in between going through it to sort of get your guys' opinion on the matter in the comments section and all that. But let's start off with the first page based on, and also Nils Camden, of course, you guys know you want to jump in anytime, please. Based on multiple witness testimonies and documents, the following chronology of events explores the possibility that President Dwight D. Eisenhower lost control to an infiltration of the corporations within the military industrial complex by the German Fourth Reich. They set forth a plan to protect our constitutional republic through a secret executive order that would activate military intelligence operations to rectify this threat if our constitutional republic in the future was ever threatened. Indications are that our constitutional republic today has and is being threatened, in that these operations have been activated and are attempting to alert and inform our citizens to this reality. Now, before I go on, whether it's people like, Phil Schneider, whether it's people like the individuals that came forward, the veterans at the 2001 National Press Conference, I got to say, they're all saying the same thing with relative to these individuals that have gone rogue are not abiding by the American Constitution. So we'll see here. The following is revealing chronological events through history indicate how this infiltration was able to happen. So anyways, let's jump right into it. So we scroll down a little bit more. Let's start with 1922, before World War II. Maria Orsic of the Vril Society has channeled Nordic ET designs for a spacecraft, which Dr. Schumann finds viable physics for development. Now, there's a couple things I wanted to address here. First off, Maria Orsic, because there's quite a bit of confusion pertaining, and these are some actual pictures of allegedly Miss Orsic's notes and things like this. Essentially, from my understanding, the way it works is that there are 3 or 4 different factions or groups. Maybe their genetics could slightly be altered of Nordics, or what would be the Hitler called the superior Aryan race or what have you. One group allegedly comes from Inner Earth. Another group comes from a handful of light years away, and the third group is allegedly what we know to be the Palladians. So what I find peculiar here is how, again, Hitler allegedly made deals not just with human-looking ETs, but also Greys and the Reptilians. But I find it interesting that we also have to keep in mind that allegedly these Nordics also helped build the Apollo program to sort of offset or combat the 1954 treaty that Eisenhower mistakenly signed. Now, what's interesting about this, though, is that it's hard to figure out which human-looking ETs belong to which faction. Were the ones that were in contact with Miss Maria Orsic in the 20s, are they the same ones that kind of just became opportunists and went along with the Allies after the surface level of World War II was lost? And I say surface level because we can argue that we won the battle but lost the ideology, because you look at Paperclip, all that stuff. But let's scroll down a bit more. 1934, Nazi SS developed operational anti-gravity craft 20 years ahead of the US with the assistance of Draco ETs. I don't think I can rebut this in any way, shape, or form. And I say this because we'll probably be looking at this on another stream because it's a whole other website. But there's a website dedicated to just the Majestic 12 documents, and not just the MJ12 documents, the documents leading up during the war of World War II, leading up to the formation or the alleged formation of Majestic 12. There's some documents literally where the what later became the United States Air Force, the US was saying to the president, Truman, Eisenhower, Lyndon B. Johnson, these things are flying and we believe they're of interplanetary origin. And this was before Roswell. So
that was before, that was during World War II even, wasn't it? That was Battle of Los Angeles area, stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. If we scroll down here, 1939, U.S. Navy spy reveals the Nazi space program to the Navy Secretary, James Forrestal, who commences a Navy spy program in Germany. Allegedly, on the surface, this is exactly how it went. Again, maybe it went in different ways. We'll check the comments shortly to see what you guys think. But if we scroll down a little more, Camden, if that's cool, we'll see here Forrestal started poaching people. Oh, sorry, let me get to that in a second. In 1942, February 24th, the Battle of LA recovers 2 ET drone craft, which the Army, Air Force, and Navy each took one for reverse engineering. Now, I'm curious to see what the audience's take is on that, because, again, this is prior to Roswell. There is a handful of, veterans. Most are not still alive today, but they're on record saying, no, we knew about this stuff before Roswell. So 1942, August 23rd, the Vril Society and the Nazi SS established a moon base with their anti-gravity craft. Now,
how pretentious, ostentatious, whatever you call it, is it to build your base on the moon in the swastika shape, though? Like, they didn't need to. They didn't.
Well, here's the obviously the photo on the right is fake. Allegedly,
but
the one on
the left, like, that's definitely a swastika.
The one on see, the thing is that the one on the left, from my understanding, is an enhanced image. I never looked at the metadata, but allegedly their base was a Nazi symbol. Yes, and I find it interesting because there are some quotes and some spy channels and cables that Hitler was communicating with the royal family, and they were jumping to and from the moon, and this is why historians interpret it as something different, because it's like there's no way you can go to and from the moon within minutes or seconds, right? So if we scroll down, 1944, this is big. Nazi plan of infiltration into the US to create a matrix of perception using a worldview warfare plan. I got to be honest with you, folks. Our friend here, great friend Nils, he's German. Nils, do you happen to know how to say that?
Planweltanschauungskrieg.
Okay, that sounds much easier to say than sound, but...
Well, it means worldview warfare.
Okay, all right. Yeah. That's exactly what it says it means.
All right, so if we had 1940... Right, 1944. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Nazis escaped to Antarctica and South America with over 100 U-boats, 250,000 Germans, and the Reich's top scientists unaccounted for. This corroborates the alleged 2 secret scientific teams Hitler had, one in Berlin, one in Antarctica. Allegedly, the scientists, the vast majority of them, and the soldiers in Antarctica did not share Hitler's view for world domination and the whole thing. They were more interested in the aliens, the tech, the interplanetary travel. We know this, allegedly, because a lot of what's occurred in terms of in the last 20, 30 years in people just going for hikes in the mountains or in the forest, whether it's in Europe or the US or wherever, Australia, you name it. And they get an encounter with what they thought was an alien, but the second the craft lands and the person walks off, they do look like that sort of Nordic type alien. Maybe they've been genetically enhanced, but there's a Nazi symbol on the craft. They're speaking fluent German and they look human. So this is something that is interesting because allegedly, the Nachtwaffen, as a rogue group, so to speak, is still working with the Solar Warden program because it was kind of mucky back in the mid to late 40s what was going to happen there after Hitler lost the battle on the surface, so to speak. But let's it certainly makes sense in my eyes relative to the research. Adolf Hitler and Heinrich Himmler successfully escaped, as revealed in the JFK files that were not released until the year 2017. Not only this, but again, I know I've referenced him quite a bit. Leonid Ivashov, he mentions in his book too from Stalin's SMERSH documents. Off the top of my head, I believe SMERSH was a sort of secret counterintelligence apparatus that Stalin put together. Interestingly enough, Putin's father also served in SMERSH. Vladimir Putin's father served in SMERSH. And those documents that Leonid Ivashov showed also detailed allegedly that that Hitler was alive and things like this. So we see here now again, this is a CIA document, and allegedly the document also has too an alleged photo from Hitler of July 2nd. 26th, I believe, 1963. Right. I just read this document a couple days ago because my eyesight's not that great. I can't zoom in at the moment, but basically it says that the CIA, one of the CIA's trusted assets, had seen Hitler and essentially had confirmed that he was essentially alive. So if we head down a little bit more. And by the way, this also, the towns in Austria on the mountains where they still believe the Third Reich is there and all that stuff, from my understanding, that still exists. May 2nd, 1945, Alan Dulles cuts a deal with the head of Nazi intelligence and his Nazi spy network of thousands to work within U.S. intelligence, the OSS, or the what later became the CIA. I don't believe there's any dispute to this. It's been quite substantiated that I believe Mr. Dulles cut a deal essentially in that regard to sort of insert himself there. But May 8th, 1945, we believed we won the war with the Nazis. If I'm not mistaken, there was an official... Sorry?
We believe we won.
Exactly. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Before we get to Paperclip, I have a fun little fact about this too. But the allegedly, according to Leonid Ivashov and so many others, it's been quite substantiated, except for other than through official channels. Interestingly enough, official institutions, channels, agencies will not confirm that Hitler's teeth and Eva Braun's teeth were in fact not theirs. Apparently, it was a total lie. The Soviets had allegedly had Hitler and Eva Braun's body. They said, yeah, it's legit. Got pushed aside, so to speak. Now, interestingly enough, 1946, Operation Paperclip. Nazis get new paperwork and get placed in many high positions in aerospace, biomedical, etc. There's a great photo that I wish I could pull up. I just don't know where it is. But essentially, former Nazis, Operation Paperclip was, many of you know, the Americans taking the Nazis saying, listen, we don't care what you did. We're going to wipe your record clean. You're very smart, whether it's in economics, whether it's in rocketry propulsion, whether it's in finance, whether it's in construction, so many other things. We're going to wipe your record clean, whether it's in pharmaceuticals, you name it. And they brought him over. Now, interesting fact is that, believe it or not, when the Nuremberg trials were going on, I want to be fair, this is according to Annie Jacobson and her research. Right. When the Nuremberg trials were going on, the Americans were literally sneaking as many Nazis as they could off the ports closest to Nuremberg as they were pushing, as the individuals in Germany, the soldiers, were pushing the Nazis into the courtroom in Nuremberg. The Americans were literally at the final straw, grasping for them, just as the Soviets were. Now, again, in terms of a moral or ethical debate, that's up for grabs because, the argument is, well, if we didn't do it, then the Soviets were going to grab them. And you know what? That's a fairly fair point. I understand competition, things like that, but, it doesn't also excuse simply, hey, these warmongers, and especially Werner von Braun, all the, the alleged unethical things he did in his time. I mean, it's a sort of a tit for tat type of debate.
I have a question. It makes me ponder. We know the people that the United States got through Operation Paperclip. We know a lot of those names.
Yep.
Who did the Soviets get away with, kind of thing? You know what I mean? Do we know those names?
I couldn't to tell. Yeah.
The saying goes they got what was left behind. Maybe there was some, like higher names from that area, but
Putin
nothing
said
known
something.
on big schedule right now.
Putin said something interesting too, that he said on his recent interview with Oliver Stone, the Showtime one, the Putin interviews. He believed at the time the scientists were smarter, the German scientists were smarter than any of the politicians back then, because they understood the balance of power needed to be kept, which is that the Americans got split the atom bomb first. But then you notice how, again, a lot of those, the Americans there went to Russia and helped out providing the atom bomb in that regard. So what Putin is saying is that once the atom was split, the genie was out of the bottle. And I agree, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Just like with, they say with cyber nowadays and surveillance, genie's out of the bottle. They can make all these fancy labels in the news and say, we're not censoring your stuff. My humble opinion, not to fearmonger, but again, I think most of you know from the Kraken episodes, I think since at least 2010, they've been surveilling everything. So all this stuff, whatever. Anyways, 1946, official history of World War II rewritten in education to hide the Nazi escape and infiltration by the Rockefeller Foundation. Now, here's what I find very interesting about this. There are quotes, not from the Nazis, but from people like General Douglas MacArthur, who have said the countries, the nations must prepare for the next war, because the next one will be of interplanetary origin. Now, again, very old school, very war oriented type gentleman and soldier, general, excuse me. What I found interesting about Douglas MacArthur's quote, however, was, again, this was an American saying that. So how come even that has been removed by the in the education system?
Right.
That's a not word for word, but he literally said the next war will be an interplanetary one. An American general who was highly respected even to this day. Why was that not put in the American education system? Even so, we got to look at both sides.
Or with the way it says rewritten, was it halfway public knowledge beforehand and then taken out?
Right.
What was that something people knew about and then they made sure people didn't?
That's another thing. That's a very good point as well, because anyways, we'll see more as we scroll. So we head to 1947, January 17th. Admiral Byrd's Operation High Jump is totally defeated by Nazi craft in Antarctica. There is, I believe, a report that signified from a typewriting report saying that one or two of these discs could not just take out our fleet, Admiral Byrd's fleet, but literally the entire United States Army. Don't quote me on that word for word, but that was allegedly the summation.
I mean,
there.
They took a whole fuck ton of the U.S.'s Army down there in Operation High Jump. So.
Yeah, that's another thing too. The official narrative. Speaking of which, quick little fun fact for drop feeding of Hollow Earth and things like that. Godzilla versus King Kong. If you look at the opening credits of the film that just came out, the Admiral Byrd footage is literally in the intro, saying, we got to look at the poles and we got to go explore. Nils, please, brother.
Yeah, Thomas just brought up an interesting fact. So according to him, the low-level project coordinators from Brown, they got sent to Russia, and what I can say about that is, everyone who worked with von Braun had at least a firm understanding of what was going on. So you get your hands on somebody like that, they're also very valuable.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Anyone who worked,
the way he said, I didn't even think about that. Sure, they got the top names in America, but they got the project managers in Russia, and those people were the ones doing the experiments. Those were the ones actually recreating things. So yeah, no, that's a really good point. Absolutely.
Let's scroll on a little more. Speaking of which, Warner Brothers helped do the official documentary for Admiral Byrd's voyage. They also allegedly went with Admiral Byrd and his team to go in and film some of the things they saw there. I'd want to get a hold of that footage if it's still around. But 1947, June 16th, a network of deep underground military bases in the U.S. commences with Hitler's mastermind, Xaver Dorsch, under Paperclip. Again, allegedly, this particular individual, who is quite well known for his ability in design, architecture, engineering, all that kind of stuff, may have in fact helped to contribute, if not was the sole contributor of designing maybe not the bases that are being expanded upon now, obviously, but the core bases at the time, like maybe the Dulce base, things like this. Now, if we scroll down a bit more, We'll see 1947, July 8th. Extraterrestrial vehicle crashes at Roswell, New Mexico, and a cover story is issued. Now, from my understanding, initially the Air Force gave the go-ahead to release the story of saying, yes, it was a saucer. We don't know what it is. But there was a very quick retraction on that, from my understanding. Let's scroll down a little bit more, Camden. Also, I don't mean, by the way, guys, I don't mean to make this about Roswell. I just want to point out the different varying variables pertaining to Roswell, which is that number one, according to Lieutenant Colonel Richard French, who is now dead, and a handful of others, the same gentleman, for those on our Patreon on Telegram that see, I put up a video of him from 2014 or 15 where he said, if I had come out about aliens 5 years ago, my life would be in danger, but I'm in my 80s now, and I think the higher ups are getting ready for disclosure. And he said he believed, when asked who the higher ups are, he goes, I believe they're what we would call the aliens, which is why I believe all this stuff of like a UAP and a UFO task force that just got voted in today in Congress and stuff. I don't think it's humans pushing it. But anyways, pertaining to Roswell, Lieutenant Colonel Richard French said there were 2 crashes. People like Jacques Vallée, James Fox, and others said on Joe Rogan's podcast that the initial disc crash was not a disc as much as it was sort of like a wing. And then we have Annie Jacobsen. And again, I don't mean to simply go off anecdotal sources individually, but Annie Jacobsen claimed on Joe Rogan and in her book that the beings from Roswell, at least one of the crashes at Roswell, because she heard as well there was more than one, the beings within the craft were actually genetically modified children by Stalin, and Stalin used reverse engineered alien tech to make that whole Roswell crash a sort of one-off psyop on the Americans to sort of tell Truman, listen, I can get in your airspace, particularly in White Sands, New Mexico, where a lot of nuclear tests were occurring and things like that. Now, Miss Annie Jacobsen's source is a gentleman who recently passed away. He had an entire wing of a museum named after him. He sat on the Atomic Energy Commission. He said that that's what he knew to be true. Okay, now if we take a look about how it was genetically modified kids and not aliens in the craft. Now, the thing is, though, take a look at Clifford Stone, who's passed away as well. He said, and I covered this in last week's public episode, he goes, not exactly word for word, but he said, he goes, you know, everything is need to know in these programs, these black programs. You know, you end up knowing more than you're supposed to know, but you don't know everything. And anyone who says they knew everything is lying. Now, I do believe, with respect, I subscribe to that concept or ideology of Mr. Stone in that regard. That you hear things, you know, you're human. You hear people whispering. You kind of get your gut feeling about something going on. But again, if Annie Jacobsen's source said, Annie, I knew it all, I did it all. Again, we got to play both sides. So July 26, 1947, President Truman initiates the National Security Act. Again, quite ironic with the timing of these things, but let's carry on. September 18th, 1947. Sorry, Camden, could you scroll? Thank you. 1947, Alan Dulles has President Truman reluctantly convert the wartime OSS into a permanent CIA, and the U.S. Air Force is created. Again, we know that, for example, Kennedy, I know JFK came much after, but he said that he said he wanted to dismantle the CIA and rip it into 100 pieces. Allegedly, he also set up the DIA to offset the CIA. Let's scroll down a bit more. September 18th, 1947. This is great. President Truman has James Forrestal create the Majestic 12 group. Okay. Now, if we scroll down a bit, allegedly there's more than 12 now. Allegedly, you know, again, they have to pick their sort of successors because of their age, so to speak, depending on who you listen to about Majestic 12 and Zodiac. That again, it's hard to say who is what, especially nowadays with more and more compartmentalization.
Yeah, like how confirmed can we be about this list of Majestic 12? I've actually seen lists that are different than this list. Most of them the same.
Right. There's a few names that come and go. Allegedly, Einstein was a consultant, not necessarily a member. It's hard to say. From my understanding, Dr. Vannevar Bush and Secretary James Forrestal are the are the two at the very least that are consistent amongst the different names or the different lists. So let's scroll down a little more. This is interesting. I never looked at it like this, but if we were them, these generals and the people in the know back then, think about it like this. 1948, over 100,000 television sets now in homes is now a primary communication tool for psychological warfare. Putting aside the frequency part, let's just pretend the Americans are still figuring that.
Programming,
Right. Yep. Let's scroll down a little bit more. We'll see here. This is, as many of you know, this is sort of my not area of expertise, but a part that I like to speak on a lot. May 1948, Project RAND turns into the RAND Corporation, initially stood for Research and Development, now run by the Air Force, forcing the Navy to secretly do ET reverse engineering operations separately. Makes sense. I
Mm-hmm.
again, we could dispute that, but this is interesting. I really do believe this expose has it bang on. 1949, May 22nd, James Forrestal wanted to alert the public to this threat and is murdered by MJ12. I don't think he wanted to alert the public. Allegedly, he was poaching members of Congress that didn't even have a slightest clue even about Roswell, let alone aliens, let alone the Nazi base on the moon. And they didn't like this. The military-industrial complex guys, the generals, didn't like it. So he allegedly fell off of that building. Anyways, let's scroll down a little bit more.
Sorry, real quick.
Yeah.
Thomas just brought up something about Roswell that was just about debris instead of bodies, and all the stories about the bodies didn't surface until the 80s, and even then, the second and third hand deathbed stories.
That's a very good Jeffrey, what's going on, brother? That's a very good point, Thomas. That's the thing with Roswell. It's actually way more confusing, and depending who you ask and when you, 1949, the CIA Act gives approval for a black budget to operate outside of the law. This is pretty common sense, even with paramilitary organizations. That's the, if I'm not mistaken, what's that? The Tertia Optica route, when they can't use diplomacy, they can't use direct kinetic warfare. What do? It's time to sign a quick contract for the SEALs. From my understanding, get sent over to the CIA. They then sign a quick contract saying that they were no longer, SEALs or CIA for the duration of just that operation. And then that's about it. So, because if they get caught, that, as we know, the US can just go, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Best example probably be like Sicario 2, the first half an hour of that movie. Can you scroll down a bit, Camden, if that's cool? All right, 1950, Alan Dulles starts CIA Operation Mockingbird, which takes full control of the mainstream media news outlets to control the public perception. We know this because former CIA Director Bill Casey said to Congress, I think it was either during the Church or the Warren Commission, he said, anyone of major importance is owned by the CIA. Now, I don't know if he literally meant owned in a financial sense, or if he meant, again, what former CIA agents such as John Stockwell came out in the 70s and 80s later and said, which is that they had people on the payroll, they had people all over the world, some of the biggest names in the media business, again, feeding stories, tricking even the media, all of that. Jeffrey says, can these aliens be future time travelers? There's more and more evidence to suggest this. Actually, I just brought this up on my Telegram just about an hour or two ago. Very possible, Jeffrey. Not all of them, but allegedly a handful of factions are, with different agendas for how they want this current timeline to proceed. But anyways, 1950, newspaper tabloid owner trained by the CIA to disseminate discrediting stories to the public on the UFO and ET subject. Now, here's what's interesting. These tabloids have been put out over the course of, say, 50 year period. What I find very interesting about these tabloids is, again, these are the tabloids you go through the grocery store, you go through the mall, you see them, it's like, oh, what the hell, you're just going to pay for your food at the grocery store, and you see these type of tabloids. But when you put them all together, it's like, oh my God, it doesn't take much to realize this is a deliberate mental psychological campaign against the people. If we scroll down a little bit more, oh yeah, look at the headlines. 5 U.S. senators are space aliens. Men in are UFOs abducting cows. Obama appoints Marsh. Yeah, like Rush Limbaugh meets with space aliens. President Clinton rides in Yeah, like. Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. I think, again, what you see of the aliens there, I don't think that's real at all. Obviously, I think if there is any real one, it would be that of probably a saucer or a craft of sorts. So yeah, if we scroll down here, 1951, this is interesting as well because we can corroborate this with certain instances such as Project Argo, which Ben Affleck did a film on about how the CIA will do anything and everything to again, and I have something about that as well. But anyways, Project Dove influences the Hollywood movie industry, which forms in the public's imagination their perception of extraterrestrials. Honestly, there is one thing that I saw on the recent Stephen Greer documentary. Again, as a whole, I'm not a fan of the guy, but little nugs and pieces I do agree with, to be truthful. When he said, take a look at every movie having to do with aliens. The vast majority of them are painting them in a negative light. I couldn't help but think he's not wrong, at least from what I understand, right? You look at A Quiet Place, you look at War of the Worlds, you look at well, those are zombies, but anyways, you guys get the idea. Let's scroll down a bit, Camden, if that's cool.
Yeah, sorry guys, I muted myself a second ago so that I could blow my nose, but I didn't unmute myself. Y'all could hear me, but stream couldn't. That's just funny.
Let's scroll down a little. Okay. Now this is interesting because I put this up on my Instagram a couple months ago, and there's been quite a debate, I believe, as to whether or not this particular document is legitimate. But 1952, February 1st, the invention of the Secrecy Act of 1951 suppresses thousands of technology advances such as anti-gravity and free energy in the US. Now, if we scroll down to the subject matter of special interests in TC 2800, again, I say this allegedly, anti-gravity devices, free energy tachyons, perpetual motion machines, room temperature superconductivity, things like this, other matters that violate the general laws of physics. May 1952, top secret MJ-12 annual report discussing containment for the Catholic Church if mass sightings occur. At the request of panel member Cardinal Francis Spellman, met with the president to discuss the containment within the Catholic Church and its hierarchy of religious speculation if mass sightings occur. Such containment was successful during the 1947 sightings when Cardinal Spellman met with the Secretary of War on June 29th. The president has been briefed on Defense Plan 4P, which was written in part by the panel member, again, by Cardinal Francis Spellman.
Okay, yeah.
And end quote. Let's jump down. This is where it gets good, in my opinion. July 12th, 1952. Nazi craft fly over Washington, D.C. to intimidate Truman and Eisenhower. This is when, in like Colonel Philip Corso's book, Colonel Corso said the Ebens, as they refer to, the ones from a particular binary planet, Zeta Reticuli, not the only species there, but Colonel Corso said essentially the leverage that these being, he goes, yes, they are far more advanced than us, but the principles of negotiation still apply. Colonel Corso said that these Ebens, or this particular species, had leverage over Eisenhower, which was that Eisenhower and his administration did not want disclosure to occur. They did not want disclosure to occur, and so therefore what ended up happening was they flew over the Greys, in this case, this set of Greys, flew over Washington to sort of say, listen, hurry up, let's make a deal, or else we're just going to start disclosing ourselves to the masses. And we know this because according to Jacques Vallée, there has been loads and loads and loads of sightings in 1952 within America and in Europe. So it seemed like these, and with the Greys walking off the craft as well, I want to add. Now, granted, because it was 1952, you didn't have a camera to just pull out and snap a picture, right? But again, I found that quite peculiar. You can find that direct quote from Joe Rogan's interview with James Fox and Jacques Vallée. Nils, brother.
Yeah, you know what I wonder? Why did they wait another 5 years to intimidate? Like, why wait?
See, this is well, that's a great point. And if you look, for example, let's say 1947 to 1952. What's interesting here as well is that we have to also think they don't perceive time the way that we do, right? Because if we also look, they flew over Washington in 1952. How come the deal was signed in 1954? To add to your point, you're going to tell me they waited 2 years to make to sort of make Eisenhower rush. But here's the thing, though. Again, far more advanced, probably have far more better patience than us than humans. Also, it's possible with the manipulation of space and time, they didn't have to wait. You know what I'm saying? If they were able to jump around, so to speak, if that makes sense, in the space-time continuum, they wouldn't have had to wait in the way that we would have. That's just I could be wrong, just my opinion. But let's scroll down a bit more, Camden. November 4th, 1952, the National Security Agency has created the NSA, which was not known to the public for many, many years. It was rumored and it was a joke in Washington that it was called no such agency instead of the NSA at the time. The start of the Eisenhower administration. Could we go down a bit more, Camden? November 18th, 1952, President-elect Eisenhower receives an MJ-12 briefing on the UFO and ET matter. Let's scroll down a little bit more. This is when it comes into debate as to whether or not those documents are legitimate, some real, some maybe not. 1952, General Walter B. Smith, an MJ-12 member, and a DCI, I don't remember off the top of my head what that stands for, sends memo to utilize UFOs for psychological warfare. This is where it gets interesting. Okay, so
I think it's the Department of Central Intelligence. I don't know why they call it that sometimes, and so, yeah, whatever.
Got you. So let's scroll down a little bit more. This is a big thing, by the way, to use UFOs for psychological warfare. 1952, November 20th, George Adamski contacting California with a Nazi craft or a Nazi CIA psyop. Again, this is where it gets interesting. Some people say George Adamski faked the whole thing. Some people say that, he didn't. But again, it's possible relative to the timing of the Nachtwaffen and when they may have gone rogue and, went with the Allies. And anyways, we'll get there. In 1953, January 20th, Eisenhower is sworn in as president. From my understanding, he already knows of the existence of ETs and all that. So let's scroll down. January 14th, 1953. Sorry, Cam. Yeah, perfect. The Robertson panel formed by the CIA to deny UFO and ET reality to the public. Jacques Vallée, I don't mean to just use his name loosely, but he was close with Alan Hynek, Carl Sagan, and others. They were forced by the academic individuals to suppress all this. I think Einstein is in there too. Is in the Robertson panel.
No, he's right there in that photo. Yes.
Right, because we now see that Einstein's assistant and all that, and Einstein had written letters to Truman and stuff like that to say, like, listen, to Eisenhower and Truman to say, don't attack them, don't be aggressive with them. There is documentation on that. 1953, Alan Dulles is assigned as director of the CIA, who is infamous for the Nazi infiltration. I'll be honest. Again, this is from a moral and ethical perspective. This is not a guy you want to trust, but, No. 1953, April 13th, Alan Dulles initiates MK Ultra for mind control projects. There you go. We know how that went in a lot of ways. 1954, not a lot of people know this, but February 20th, Eisenhower had a first contact meeting with benevolent Nordic extraterrestrials at Edwards Air Force Base. There is some missing schedule from the president's time and timestamps and all that stuff. Again, not a lot of people know there were two meetings. 1954, March 10th, JANAP 146C established severe penalties for military or civilian pilots disclosing UFO sightings. If we scroll down a little bit more, April 1954, MJ-12 Special Operations Manual, SOM-1-01, Extraterrestrial Entities and Technology, Recovery and Disposal. We have gone through these documents on many different episodes before, but what's interesting is to corroborate this, Staff Sergeant Clifford Stone, who's now deceased, by the way, said that every time he was part of a group that went to go do crash retrievals for the, I believe it was for the Navy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And he said, it was the Navy. And he said every time they would get on a plane or something or drive to a site where they would take both the entities, inhabitants of the craft and, disperse of the craft, following those manuals, they'd open the book. Okay. It literally tells you if it's this type of species, this is how you deal with it. If it's this type of material from this faction, this is how you deal with it. He said every time before they got onto the crash site, way before that, there would be a soldier holding out a white plastic bag. They had to rip off their names, their country flag patch, all of that stuff off their suits, drop it in the bag. Okay, time to go to work. Let's scroll down a bit more. May 29th, 1954, Nazi SS start the first year of yearly ongoing Bilderberg secret meet. Okay, they say Nazi SS here in this expose, but again, they're saying that because we can argue really there was no, because of Paperclip, right? Of yearly ongoing Bilderberg secret meetings, which coordinates the agenda for the mainstream media today. Suzanne had said Disney owns Fox. Do they also own Fox?
Yeah, no, they own everything.
I thought, please correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but I thought Disney bought everything of Fox's from Rupert Murdoch except for Fox News.
Rupert Murdoch maintains the majority stakeholder in Fox News. I don't know that you couldn't say Disney doesn't own
Okay.
some of it.
Fair enough. Okay. Also, speaking of which, before we scroll down on the far right there, folks, you see the web of the Trilateral Commission. Jeffrey Epstein sat on the Trilateral Commission. In addition to that, it's interesting to see the connections here, at least the way it's presented with Mickey Mouse, Disney. Again, we know, I got to be careful because of the stream, but we know what Disney used to provide Caribbean rides to the Virgin Islands. Epstein, yeah.
To a small island of St. James. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So let's scroll down a little more. July 18th, 1954, this misspelled here, but the Greada Diplomatic Treaty, Greada, I don't believe there's an N in there, is signed for a technology transfer program with Zeta Reticuli ETs by Eisenhower at Kirtland Air Force Base. Now, the only thing I don't like with the way that they presented this is that this is Skinny Bob stills from the KGB footage. So again, they're using maybe the same species, but different footage to show whatever. Let me see. Hold on a second. 1954, Nelson Rockefeller restructures the CIA and MJ-12 operations. This is where it gets interesting, which leaves President Eisenhower without jurisdiction or access. I believe this was when the shadow government, the deep state, rogue government, whatever you want to call it. And by the way, these terms were used by guys in the rogue government for the last 30, 40, 50 years. It's just new to us, the public. But I believe it started with Eisenhower, and then the quote unquote purge was finally done with Nixon, and then Reagan caught the tail end of it. But anyways, that's just my opinion. Let me see. Let's scroll down a little more, Camden. Reverse engineering operations moved from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base to Area 51 or S4 under the control of the CIA. Now, this is where it's a little bit interesting because I don't know if it's CIA or if it's the private contractors that know more than the CIA, but they're under contract from this. It's hard to say. But let's keep going.
So the idea here would be, but why move? Do we have any idea why they would move in 1954 from Wright-Patterson to, because it was just getting too publicly known?
It was that, and from my understanding as well, after the deal was signed that Eisenhower made, these Orion Draco type grays actually infiltrated the motivations and allegedly the minds of some of Eisenhower's people. The more like depraved ones, the Rockefellers, the I forgot his name, David Adele or something. But I just want to mention as well too, Thomas Anderson says, Dave, funny you glossed over the most important fact of the whole UFO meme, which is the purposeful coupling of psychological warfare and advanced forms of technology, example UFO craft. Yes, Thomas, yes, I appreciate you pointing that out because again, I believe you're referring to the George Adamski thing, and this is the thing too that is very difficult to discern, which is that if you look at sightings now, are they done by the NSA literally with the Project Mannequin operation where they humans can control craft and make holograms? I mean, there are people I know for a fact on our Patreon, a conversation with Jeremy Riss, the founder of Alien Scientist. He said he spoke with guys out of Area 51 who said blatantly, we have tech to create holograms and make them appear on radar as if they're blatantly physical objects. So I appreciate that, Thomas. That's a very good point. Let's scroll down a bit more, Camden. And also Jacques Vallée's books have said for years too, he believes it's like a major hologram machine going on in most cases. Some cases
I
it's
loved
actually
his
their craft,
comment about part of the Bay of Pigs thing was we were gonna do a giant hologram of Jesus coming back to distract, that was one of the wow.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And they had that back then. 1954 in October. This is interesting. This crosses over with a few different things. United States deployed anti-gravity craft 20 years behind the Nazis. Now, interestingly enough, some of this particular design that you see here is allegedly called the Flux Liner. This was shown quite substantially at the 2001 National Press Conference. And you could see here again, there were some closed off parts of a particular, I think it was a Lockheed Martin show back about 25 years ago, where they showed some of these craft literally hovering off the ground, but only to certain individuals of the Air Force and others. So it was kind of like a elephant in the room, so to speak, type thing. 1955, February 11th, President Eisenhower negotiates an agreement, or rather a surrender, which I agree with. It started in 54, but it sort of, they thought they had more leverage than they really did. This, according to Colonel Corso, negotiates agreement or surrender with the Nazi Draco Alliance at Holloman Air Force Base. Makes perfect sense. Again, quite maybe the story, that part of it is wrong, but we know no other alternative to it, to my understanding. 1955 February, Eisenhower's secret executive memo creates new members of permanent MJ-12 committees with Alan Dulles as MJ-1. Excuse me, not David Dulles, Alan Dulles, excuse me. Let's scroll down a bit more. March 9th, 1955. This is when it gets interesting, okay? Walt Disney and Warner, if it wasn't already, Walt Disney and Warner von Braun used television to sell to the public on the use of rocket propulsion to overcome gravity. Again, you see, you put the TVs in the households of the people. When you look at it from the way we are now, with the mindset that they had back then, it's not, again, this is what I mean when I say, guys, we're all human, in the sense that there's obviously smarter people in areas of expertise, but they're humans planning against other humans. So if we understood this narrative back then, we would have been able to see this very strongly. Let's scroll down a bit more. Again, it's just because the mainstream media has not put it in this way for us. But you see, when we look at it in this regard, not that they have to, but when we put it in this regard, we see what goes on. November 1955, Operation Deep Freeze, transferring supplies and personnel to Antarctica. Seldom is known about this, from my understanding. There's knowledge on it, but nothing, super, super crazy. Again, makes sense. January 7th, 1956, if we scroll down a bit, Willard Wannell has contact in Oahu, Hawaii, hopefully I said that right, with Nazi craft. We see here, he noted the swastika and Nazi Iron Cross on both the UFO and the uniform of the occupant. The saucer pilot spoke with a German accent and had a Nazi uniform. Again, and is there a way for you to zoom in, Camden, by chance, or no? If not, it's fine.
I don't know if I want to click on it and...
Don't worry. If you guys can see, if not, then it's all good. But you could see on the craft that, I know it's just a drawing, but there's the Iron Cross and the
right
swastika.
Right there where my mouse is.
Yes, allegedly this was quite the design that they used, at least back then, the Nazis, for their craft. If we scroll down, 1957. Now this is where it gets interesting, okay, folks, and I'm going to add to this. A global effort in educational institutions to silence the truth about the powers of human consciousness to affect reality. Not just this, but anti-gravity, you name it. Now, here's what's interesting. Truthfully, I never thought of it this way, but the conversation I had with Jeremy Riz, which will be public in the next handful of days or weeks, it's on Patreon right now for the members. He goes, if you don't think that there are different, not word for word, but about this, if you don't think there are different dummy companies, corporations all around the world that are all, subsidiaries, you name it, of the same 3 or 4, institutions, Oxford, Harvard, Stanford, Yale, the whole thing. He goes, then you're sorely mistaken, in the sense that if you got some kid that's working in a lab that just got out of university that may have found the sort of the loophole or the gap between in the formulas of, say, trying to create some type of anti-gravity or propulsion, there's a corporation that will come, say, we love your work, buy it up, and then it kind of metaphorically gets thrown in the trash bin, because it then goes right back to the same 3-4 guys, which are, again, allegedly Majestic 12, that whole thing there. Again, not saying that as if it's fact. It's certainly something to consider. Take a look at how many young people have, and also, interestingly enough, Eric Weinstein mentioned, look at the history of physics, at least within the West and Europe in the last 70 years. There hasn't necessarily been any new individual per se that has contributed substantially that is young. They're all older, which is interesting, because if they're all older, it means that they're following a certain agenda or narrative relative to certain individuals that told them to shut up at the beginning. So let's scroll down a little bit more, Camden. 1957, astronaut Gordon Cooper at Edwards Air Force Base films an encounter of alien craft, which the CIA confiscates. And I quote this, according to Gordon Cooper, you can check this out, it's legit. So they told one untruth. They had to tell another to cover that one, then another. It just snowballed. And right now I'm convinced a lot of very embarrassed government officials are sitting there in Washington trying to figure a way to bring the truth out. They know it's got to come out one day, and I'm sure it will. America has a right to know, end quote. Does that not sound like, folks, the whole Colonel Corso thing? You give what he said in his book, and I got an excerpt quote. You have a shack full of secrets, a physical shack. You give up a bit of that shack in order to you give up some of the secrets of that shack to save the rest. You then move that shack to another location. And that's, you do that over and over and over. You give up 5-10% of what's in that shack, mix it in with disinfo to the public to keep the masses happy, and then, okay, quick, hide the rest over and over and over. Right. It's compartmentalized. Oh, just keep doing it until investigative journalists, whoever's trying to dig into it, either ends up getting quote unquote suicided, or they simply just can't find it because it just keeps going.
Crowd, right?
Right, exactly. If we scroll down a bit, and that's also, it's Jeremy Riz said it best. It's a typical intelligence operation. What I just said there, sleight of hand. Just keep handing it down. Speaking of which, Colonel Philip J. Corso retired to be lieutenant colonel.
They did not do him a good service in that photo. Oh my god.
No, they didn't. No,
I can't look at it.
Has an encounter with an extraterrestrial at White Sands. The little ET asked Philip Corso to turn off the radar so that he could get out of here and go. He said this telepathically for those that want more detail. And Philip Corso asked back, well, if I help you, what's in it for me? What do I get out of this? The ET replied, a new world if you can take it. From my understanding, I don't believe he jumped on the craft with that ET. From my I don't know.
I've never heard that he did from anywhere.
It's in his book. I just don't remember exactly what happened there. But anyways, let's scroll down a little bit more. This is interesting. Okay, so 1957, March 16th, Valiant Thor arrives in a spaceship allegedly from Venus to meet President Eisenhower and offer solutions for Earth. Apparently, Venus was once like Earth long ago, but they destroyed it and made the same mistakes that we're allegedly doing now. Not saying global warming, just saying, with the wars and all this crap. And they now live on massive motherships that orbit Venus, allegedly. Now, here's what's interesting. We see 3 photographs here. Allegedly, Valiant Thor came with some royalty as well, a brother and sister, but according to the Strangers at the Pentagon book, the way it happened was that they explained they're so genetically advanced and stuff that it's actually common for incest to be a thing. But anyways, look at these 3 pictures. The first 2 are pretty consistent, okay, in my opinion, relative to what he looks like. Look at the third one. We see there the chin is different, the fingers are very long and thick, but it just doesn't seem like the guy on the left. Maybe shape-shifting, or maybe a different different person on the team. But
I mean, yeah, you said brother and sister too, so I mean, there's plenty of room for those to get mixed up.
Right. Allegedly, also at Wright-Patterson, or was it Holloman or Wright-Patterson, with the first meeting in '54 with the Nordics that Eisenhower did not sign with. Allegedly, what happened there was that that faction of Nordics said, we want to give you the cure for a lot of your sicknesses, and we want to give you free energy. And Eisenhower replied essentially, cheap energy would not help our economy. So again, especially nowadays, power structure collapse, oil means nothing, whatever. November 5th, 1957, Reinhold O. Schmidt has contact in Nebraska with a Nazi craft. He could hear them talking among themselves in High German language at very good High German. So again, this is what I'm saying. We see,
because we have him on the stream, Nils, I'll ask you, what is the difference in High German and common speak?
It's kind of like in English, there's writing, like the way you write, you would probably never talk like that. It's the same way.
Okay.
High German, and also like, pronunciation and no slang.
So they were just
Great question.
They were just uppity and snooty about the way they talked. Kind of thing.
I would see it more as clean,
Oh, okay. Yeah. I hear you, I guess. Yeah, sure.
Great question, Camden, by the way. 1958. This is corroborated by other documents as well, too. If anyone wants, just email us, whatever. 1958, President Eisenhower is denied access to Area 51, and he then threatens to invade the base if MJ-12 does not allow him access. Witness testimony of CIA operative Stein Cooper, sent on mission by Eisenhower to Area 51 to report activities. This gentleman here was a CIA operative, the one sitting down who's bald, was on his deathbed. Very similar to sort of like the Boyd Bushman testimony. I'm old. You can call me senile. I don't care. I know what I did. I know what occurred. I need to get this on tape and record before I die. Fair enough. Eisenhower allegedly said too, he was told by the folks at Area 51, this is what's interesting too. Scroll down one more, Camden. I just want to see if I'm, no, never mind. Anyways, scroll up again. Sorry. Eisenhower said to the folks at Area 51, they said to Eisenhower, you don't have jurisdiction to see what's going on at Area 51, the projects they're working on. He goes, I don't give a damn. He goes, you tell them I'm coming there in a week. If not, I am going to send, I forgot exactly what army, but he basically said, I'm going to pull the boys from so-and-so. And he goes, we're going to come down there and we're going to ravage through everything. Long story short, the folks at Area 51 ended up letting Eisenhower go on his own. I think with a couple of others, that's it. They didn't want a big, ruckus being made. I think they let him in because he already knew and met the alien. He knew what was going on. It's not like he was out of the loop, right? Eisenhower ends up going there. He comes back with a totally different attitude and mentality. He then allegedly sits down at his desk and tells his officials, his underlings, whatever you want to call them. He goes, leave him alone. Don't make any legislation, don't make a ruckus, leave him alone. So whatever he saw there, whether again relative to what we would be surprised with now, I don't know. Maybe time travel, very bad genetic experiments, I don't know. But essentially, he came back a different person, saying, "Just leave him alone," type thing. Who knows? Maybe he learned that the aliens were really running things, especially at Area 50. I don't know.
Maybe he
1950.
Yeah, sorry? It was the 3rd Battalion Army.
It could.
It was also. I mean, he could have just learned that they were doing that like crazy Nazi geneticist eugenics experiments that just like no one needed to see.
If I'm being honest with you, brother, there's a lot of things that I'm noticing now, even with current interviews of guys like Jack Valet, Lou Elizondo, and Robert Bigelow. Think of them what you will, but it seems like they're more, and I have nothing to go off of this for the record, but it seems like they're more afraid of saying too much information because they're told by non-humans the way this information has to come out. Whether that's fear in a good way or bad way is different, but it's like these guys seem to hesitate, like it's something much bigger than. Anyways, 1958, President Eisenhower sets up a secretive executive order for a USMC Special Section Military Intelligence Unit to act as an institutional future safeguard. The U.S. Marine Corps. Again, I have tremendous respect for those in the Marine Corps, but you see, the question is ultimately, did the Marine Corps in and of itself offset the same way Kennedy tried to do DIA to offset CIA? I think it kind of just fell into that whole bucket or umbrella. But February 7th, 1958, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency is created. Colonel Corso, I believe, worked in what was ARPA before it became DARPA. It was initially, I believe, the Advanced Research Projects Agency, and then later the defense part was added. I could be wrong on the timing of that, but I just wanted to put that out there. Let's scroll down a bit more, Camden. July 29th, 1958, NASA is created and run by Nazi SS, keeping us believing we need primitive rocket propulsion. This is interesting, okay? Now, if we scroll down a little bit more. Okay. 1959, Brigadier General Stephen Lovekin on Eisenhower's staff witnessed the loss of control to the corporations. Now, it's not just him. We can, there's so many others, Don Phillips, you name it. But could we jump up one quick second, Camden, for... Yeah, Nazi SS. Okay, the rocketry and propulsion. It seems like whatever faction helped us, according to Herman Oberth, which we'll get to in a second, when he said we can't attribute to all of our advancements in rocketry and propulsion on our own. We've been helped by the people of other worlds. I can't help but think that, again, you look at these, ancient hieroglyphs, scriptures, the form of rocket propulsion doesn't seem to be new to us as humans. We may not remember, but our ancestors may have been given or taught this type of information as well, or knowledge.
Right.
It's funny though how propulsion again never seems to go beyond the vicinity of a particular planet or solar system. Sort of like if you're an advanced species, what are you going to do if you see an inferior species that doesn't? They're organized, but they're still primitive. Like they get violent quick. That's humans, right? What are you going to do? Okay, we'll help them a bit, but just enough to let them get off the planet, but not like you can't get to our house.
Them, I don't know that I would want them off the planet even.
Yeah,
because then that's a whole new place to have war.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing too. So let's scroll down some more. Past that. June 8th, 1959, Project Horizon. A study is made for the establishment of a lunar military outpost. We got the documents on that. It officially, I believe, released from the CIA archives, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
That's pretty legit.
Yeah, no, that's a reading room doc.
Right. It's also, I don't know if it is or it's connected to Project A117, A117, where they wanted to drop a nuke on the moon to make the Soviets jealous. But then at the same time, it says the Soviets had a base on the moon that they abandoned. So again, it's and that's on the CIA's website as well. So see how it's right in front of our face. 1959, here we are. Nazi paperclip scientists claim extreme advancements due to having help from the people of other worlds. You got Werner von Braun on the right there and his mentor, Herman Oberth, on the left. Both hardcore Nazi SS guys. Let's be very clear about this. Let's scroll down a bit. 1959, December 1st, the Antarctic Treaty is signed, yet the Nazis secretly are in violation by utilizing slave labor underground for their military space operations. The reason I would subscribe to this possibility or proposal is that I could definitely see that happening relative to the mindset of the Nazis. But I currently,
there's
folks,
still that giant swath of land in Antarctica that no one has territorial claim to, and none of the territorial claims is the United States. Is Germany. Like that's one of the weirdest parts.
But interestingly enough, there's a buffer, which is the U.S. You want to do anything, you got to ask the Americans.
Right, but we don't own any land there. We don't do anything there. No.
Exactly. Also, funny enough, you can't even claim that unclaimed land.
Yeah, no, you're not allowed to.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
That's claim over it apparently.
But if you ever want to even go close to it, you got to talk to the Americans. But it's unclaimed. You see how ironic that is?
Not only to the that's not entirely right. For example, like from Germany, I could just apply from the German government for an entry.
Right. But the German government isn't gonna not ask the treaty as a whole for you to begin with, right? Like that's something they have to go through bureaucratically.
By the way, Nils, I could be wrong, brother. I would just assume that, again, because of all the other stories of people going to the French authorities, the German authorities, the Italian authorities on UFOs, and they're all told you got to go to the Americans. I can't help but think that there's something there. Now, yes, you could apply for an expedition, absolutely. February 28th, 1960. This is interesting. President Eisenhower has meeting in Bariloche, Argentina, a known Nazi hideout of Adolf Hitler, who is alive at this time.
This picture on the bottom is interesting.
Yeah. I don't
Hitler
know
is
the
not
source
in
of
it.
that.
There is a photo of Hitler right there. Eisenhower is, I believe that's him in the back, but that's strange.
Yeah, and you see the photo on the left there too that's, I mean, again, the Argentina, Austria, Brazil, there's a lot. So again, I'm not going to tell anyone in which way or another that was. I wasn't there, obviously. January 17th, 1961, Eisenhower attempts to warn the American public on television.
Probably the best thing he ever did. And
Yep. Sorry?
No, and it got swept under the rug. Of course it did, but he tried.
No, exactly. President, let's see here. I'll just read the first part. We must guard, and I quote, against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex, end quote. He was really trying to give a warning without saying it word for word. And I find it interesting that, again, politicians mention, even political commentators say, Eisenhower warned us. I got to say, folks, I appreciate people who reference this speech, but I think they're also missing the bigger picture, which is that, again, the extraterrestrial influence, in my opinion, via the military-industrial complex. But let's continue.
Arguably, if you'd say that Operation Paperclip created the industrial complex and the UFOs worked with Nazis, then those would be the military-industrial complex by proxy.
It would be the same guys, maybe a guy or two coming in that's fresh, but yeah, exactly. January 19th, 61, Eisenhower and Kennedy have a private meeting over the situation of MJ-12. All right, Eisenhower's gone. We got JFK rolling in there. Future presidents, CIA director, and heads of intelligence are now illegally being denied access. Okay. I have a slight disagreement with this particular statement here in the expose, which is that, again, I think Nixon was the last one. And I say this because, again, you look at some of the transcripts on record and some of the excerpts and some of the things Reagan said. I think they were allowed in on some things.
Well, However, Nixon was establishment enough to be allowed in on some things, maybe even prior to presidency, because it was Nixon and Kennedy that were running against each other. So, I mean, he was establishment already at that time. So I think that could be why Kennedy no, Nixon later, yes.
I fully agree. Again, even like with Reagan, it's because these guys were sort of there before and they kind of heard. So it's like, okay, we'll let him in on a few, on a fair amount. But anyways, we'll get there in a sec. 1963, President Kennedy, 10 days after sending a top secret memo to the CIA requesting the UFO files, an assassination directive by Alan Dulles was carried out on the president. Now, here's the thing. If we scroll down a bit more, let's see if it continues this. Okay, sorry. Before we go on with Kennedy there, here's the thing. There is such thing that occurs where it's like a kill list.
They just glossed all the way over Lyndon B. That's crazy to me, actually. Like,
they glossed over. Yep.
That guy was the beginning of the establishment owned everything. That's crazy that he has nothing to do with any
well
of
they
this.
say Lyndon B was the starter, and then when the Clintons came in, that was the solidifier of establishment owns both sides, right? But okay, I do want to say as well too, to be fair, again, Bobby Kennedy, allegedly Marilyn Monroe knew that she was going to hold a press conference about the things that JFK showed her. JFK allegedly showed her some alien disc craft at a hangar, and allegedly, Bobby Kennedy went in to go and have her killed quietly, was seen going in and out of her house with a doctor. With that being said, I do want to be fair though. There were a lot of people other than just the CIA, from my understanding, that wanted Kennedy dead. You had the Italian mafia, very, very strong.
Yeah, so many people.
Yeah, Kennedy's father was a bootlegger with Joseph Bonanno, who was the head of the Bonanno crime family, one of still today the major 5 crime families in New York, was a bootlegger with him. And so Bobby Kennedy said
my understanding that they helped not rig the election, but they definitely helped him get elected in their mob styles, and they did not get what they wanted back.
They were allegedly stuffing ballot boxes, intimidation. Yeah. And a couple things. JFK did not return the favors that his father had promised on behalf of his son to the Italian mob. In addition to that, JFK's brother, this is on transcript in the White House, actually, there's a documentary on it. Bobby was this was close to JFK, the father, Joseph Kennedy's death. Bobby Kennedy was sitting there, and he's with JFK, the president, and their dad. And he goes, "Dad, I want to go after the mob." And the father goes, no. And apparently, yeah, the father was eating, Joseph Kennedy, and his fork dropped into his plate. He was in shock. He's like, apparently he got up and he's like, "Don't do this," or "I'm walking away." And then Bobby goes, "Dad, I'm doing this." And then he walked away. So there goes the potential, there goes the connection there. Anyways,
I wanted to. Attorney General, like he's allowed to do that, but that's like what your bread and butter was. That's what made you one of the most powerful families in America. It's just that's
there's a lot of Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, those guys allegedly helped the Allies during the war. Lots of ties with organized crime and stuff like that back then. 1977, President Carter having reported a UFO, he made a campaign to promise to release the UFO files. He was then denied access by CIA Director George H.W. Bush. I would even say that guy metaphorically or literally a reptilian. But the thing is too is that Carter made a promise to release the UFO files, but then later came back and said, no, I can't do it because of national security.
Well, he's the only president that has he has a reported MUFON sighting. Like, he's filed papers at a campaign speech where he saw a UFO.
Yep. No, he also went in there into the briefing room on UFOs, and I don't believe they told him a lot, or maybe they did to scare the shit out of him so he wouldn't ask again. He came out clutching his rosary and crying. Whether that was, he was told we were a social experiment, we're a lab. What would make him cry, clutch his rosary, so to speak? Hard to say. Again, it might even make some of us cry if we don't know.
I mean, do know he has done so much fucking work, humanitarian style, since.
Right. Fair enough. I mean, I just want to be completely honest with you guys, at least in my opinion, allegedly what happened when you had those Americans stuck in Iran under the Carter administration, apparently what really happened, according to Ari Ben-Menashe in his book, I think it's called Secrets of War, George H.W. Bush, who was then CIA director, met with Iranian officials out in, I forgot where it was some hotel, and basically said, "You keep them hostage so we can get Reagan in."
Yeah.
Because they didn't. The CIA didn't.
I say all this as I don't normally actually. It's not like it's a brag thing, but my grandmother's sister married into his family. Like my mom and them got to go to school with Amy, his daughter, Carter's daughter, and did White House tours while there was no White House tours allowed while he was president and stuff. So proxy, I've met this man 3-4 times. He is a good person. He is an actually good person. So I could see why he would walk out of the White House clutching his rosary if he was told things that are actually horrible.
Well, another thing too, I wanted to mention as well is that when one point that I think people gloss over, I don't know if you want to scroll down a bit, Camden, just to get to the next point. Christopher Mellon said to Joe Rogan on his show, on record, on tape, he goes, the thing is with the presidency, it's not that they are not allowed to know everything, it's that it's just not worth it for them. Now, here's the thing too, the Department of Energy allegedly has a different classification. The president does not have full access to things like the Department of Energy, Area 51, of course. Now, what I find equally as interesting is that, again, we're going off of a government guy, allegedly an intelligence guy, spy his whole life, Christopher Mellon. He said, though, that it would take at least 6 months for the president just to get briefings on all this top secret stuff. So it's just not worth it for them. It's not worth it for them to know.
And I think a lot of it, that's what I was going to say, is maybe plausible deniability, because this is a high figure. This is a public facing person. If they don't know, they can't ever testify. They can't ever write on it in, like, you know, their books after presidency. They can't speak on it later if they don't ever actually know.
Right, exactly. 1993, President Clinton, there's something I want to add to this. White House correspondent Sarah McClendon quoted Clinton in response to UFO disclosure. Sarah, there's a secret government inside the government and I don't control it. This is interesting. And I say this because this is quite ironic for Bill to say, because if you look at Bill Clinton's involvement in Iran-Contra with the Mossad, with it goes all the way back to even World War II and the Promise software. For a guy as corrupt, let's just be blatant, whether you like him or not, for a guy as corrupt as people like Bill Clinton, for him to say, for a corrupt person to say there's an even more corrupt group within the already corrupt group, Jesus Christ, that's like, holy cow. Okay. So let's scroll down. In 1993, CIA Director James Woolsey, in a 3-hour private meeting with Dr. Stephen Greer, this is the same Stephen Greer we speak of all the time. He did actually brief politicians, and this is true. The CIA director stated, quote, "I know this subject is real. I want to know why the hell I can't gain access to it," end quote. I do believe this quote to be accurate. I believe by the 90s, it was very difficult to get any access to any of that stuff. It was real lockdown tight. It still was a time when cell phones weren't, you know, they didn't have the tech like they do now, and you name it. I also find it quite peculiar that to help substantiate my proposal, that, again, just a proposal of mine, that I am of the concept that Greer has been backed by a certain faction, whether he knows it or not. I think he does know it. Interesting that he started getting backed by, allegedly, these certain factions shortly after he started briefing CIA intel people and politicians all around the world. It's possible he was given a deceitful in, but again, this is just my proposal, doesn't mean it's legit. 1993, outside of Area 51. Sure.
Real quick, is there any records of what Stephen Greer was briefing the presidents on, or those hiring officials? Because
I don't want to say yes or no. I don't know.
Surely it can't be stuff that he's preaching now.
There's records of it, but what he basically briefs the Carter on was the things that we could know publicly, like UFO sightings and things like that, basically saying, so why can't we find out more things from the government? It wasn't like anything that the government didn't already know about, I guess is the way to say it. It was more like bringing them evidence that is irrefutable, that's publicly available, and then saying, so what do you know? And they basically were like, nah, bro.
And when he briefed Clinton, allegedly it was the same, like what we know now from 2017, from that New York Times story up until now with like Lou Elizondo, the things they have on record, on like data, solidified data as fact, that's allegedly what Greer briefed Clinton on. So it's nothing super out. I mean, never mind, 25 years ago, that's quite out there stuff. But, you know, relative, again, this is what I mean about the shack. What Corso said meant about the shack. You give up some secrets to hide the rest. The secrets that were totally classified 25 years ago are now in the public, at least to a certain metric. 1993, outside of Area 51, civilian researchers meet for first time with S4 scientist Robert Lazar, aka Bob Lazar. Again, make of that as you will. If you want to scroll down a bit more, please, Camden. Yeah. But again, make of Lazar as you will. I don't mean to. Being one of the researchers at this meeting, I covertly recorded the only video of this event. Again, make of Lazar as you will. I believe that's for a separate time or discussion, to be honest. Area 51 base goes into lockdown due to these civilian meetings. A classified NRO special security advisory is sent to all basic base operations. On the distribution list is included, can we scroll down a bit, Camden? Is included special access programs or USAPs, special access programs, such as Cosmic and Magi Ops, or Majestic or Magic Ops. This is interesting because I believe Robert Reed, forgive me for not remembering, but worked at NATO with a top secret cosmic clearance. The same gentleman who said that there were much more than 4 species, but there were 4 species that were strongly interested in Earth, that were coming and going. One of them looked just like us. So again, this concerned the military guys, but April 9th, 1997, this is where it gets interesting. I gotta be honest. In my opinion, I gotta give Greer credit in this regard. There's a lot to break down here. Stephen Greer acquires this NRO classified document and sets up a meeting at the Pentagon. Dr. Greer is joined by Lieutenant Commander Willard Miller and astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell. Lieutenant Commander Willard Miller, from my understanding, is the same gentleman who had the top secret TK clearance at the 2001 National Press Club, who was also, again, he was involved with, I believe, the DIA, if I'm not mistaken. He was the one, he said this in 2001, I almost became a part of the deep state, or the shadow government. He used the words shadow government and deep state. He used those words all the way back then. He goes, but I got out because I decided not to. As we know, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, he died, and his estate, quote unquote, leaked the Admiral Wilson, Dr. Eric Davis transcript document that many of us know now today. Let's scroll down a little bit more. Here we go. A meeting is held with the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Vice Admiral Thomas Wilson. The Admiral asking to be read into these unacknowledged secret access program listed on the NRO document that a reverse engineering ET craft is denied access and threatened to immediately drop any further investigation, or he would lose his rank and be retired early. Vice Admiral Wilson is furious that his high level of constitutional authority is being denied access to these illegal operations. He authorizes Dr. Greer to bring forth witnesses before the mainstream media of the world that are willing to testify under oath before congressional hearing. Now, again, we can go on and on about this, but we do know that, let's scroll down a bit more because I think everyone knows about this stuff. The 2001 National Press Club Conference, yes, the mainstream media outlet cameras and cable, they were cut, they were interfered with. We scroll down, of course, this is all the stuff we cover on the show all the time. 57 different species that they know of, according to Clifford Stone, you name it. Let's scroll down a little bit more. Okay, how did the mainstream media cover this major disclosure event? The controlled mainstream media effectively sanitized this from the public's awareness, utilizing what is termed as a limited hangout so as to not alert the public to these illegal operations within our government. The brief coverage by the mainstream media gave the public the impression that we simply wanted to have a congressional hearing on the reality of just UFOs. Again, interestingly enough, there were congressional hearings, by the way. I believe it was in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken. And as certain politicians were walking out of those private hearings, they were closed hearings, a UFO did fly by. 2002, computer hacker in the UK discovers the US Navy secret space program, Solar Warden. Again, this is where it gets iffy in my research, where I don't want to, but I end up conflating the secret space program, Solar Warden program, with that of the Nachtwaffen, where that sort of kind of comes in, and if there are any agreements made with maybe some members of the Nachtwaffen or not, hard to say. Inspired by the 2001 disclosure event witness testimonies, Gary McKinnon discovers evidence of the reality of the Navy secret space program. If we scroll down a bit, in the Naval Space Command computers, he sees a large cigar-shaped spacecraft, naval space vessel USS Hillenkoetter and USS LeMay listed. Lists of non-terrestrial officers and fleet-to-fleet transfer logs are shown as well. This is true. The Bush administration was so upset at the security breach revealing the Navy's secret space program that they wanted McKinnon to be put away in prison for 70 years. Kind of sort of sounds like Assange now, doesn't it? Except take away the alien stuff. Total recall of U.S. Navy secret space program service. Since the year 2000, multiple testimonies have surfaced of individuals who were recruited into this program. We have to keep in mind, too, that there are, in fact, ones that are just doing this for money, so let's be vigilant. These programs utilize extremely advanced ET-based technologies ever since the program launched back in the 80s. Recruits serve their 20-year tour of duty, the 20-back program in space, on a separate timeline. At the end of their tour of duty, their age and time regressed back to their point of enlistment on this timeline, and their memories of service erased. Some people, through hypnotic regression and all that, have been able to recover this, as we know. After 20 years elapses on this timeline, the recruits start to have a total recall of their 20 years of service in the Navy's SSP. This is why after the year 2000, many are having total recall of their service that started back sometime in the 80s. The timing of it would make sense. They utilize advanced holographic med beds that can perform this regression, restructure any part of the body based on your DNA frequency, and can cure any disease, as well as perform memory suppression. What I find interesting pertaining to this part of it here is that back in 2006, speaking with Project Camelot, Clifford Stone said, I believe that by 2016-17, he said things are going to have to start coming out, and he refused to go into detail why, but he said lots of things are going on behind the scenes. He wasn't exactly wrong. He named the 2016-2017 timeline. That was when the New York Times story broke. That was when Lou Elizondo became known to the world. So technically, again, we have to define that. But anyways, revealing knowledge that Eisenhower set in place a plan in the future that would act as an institutional safeguard to our constitutional republic, Michael Gerloff, part of the U.S. Marine Corps, allegedly part of the secret space program, says a secret government, so to speak, had come into being surrounding all the secrecy, surrounding the MIC, and that they in some way had lost control of that. And in a sense, there was a secret government operating behind the scenes. I believe Eisenhower and the good men and women that were of like mind, who did not want to lose their souls, who didn't want to see this occur, but realized it was kind of already too late on some level. My memories as an intelligence officer, that was what Corso said in his book, by the way, too. My memories as an intelligence officer, the briefings I attended, the things I learned was that there was a plan put in place, and it was going to be a very long-term plan and much further down the road into our future where this information was going to be brought out. Again, Randy Kramer, think of him as you will. The U.S. Marine Corps Special Section was created by a secret executive order by Eisenhower as an institutional safeguard. Quite interesting to see. Let's scroll down a little more. Again, the deep state. Hold on. Let's scroll down a little more. Let me see. Okay, now this is when it gets into sort of like the sort of more like focusing on the Democrats and stuff like that. I don't necessarily like to I mean,
it's not because they're Democrats. That's who was in power at the time and who worked for the plan. I've said it before. I'm very much not a right-wing, left-wing person, but the entire bird needs to die.
Right.
So I think that's who was in power and who worked then.
Right. I agree. I actually wanted to ask, guys, this is the end of this document, but let's ask the chat. If I sent you another link, Hamden, would you be able to put it up by chance?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go through, if you guys are interested, let's take another 20, 30 minutes and then we'll call it, to go through the Clifford Stone interview with Project Camelot in 2006. It's only going to add to this. I think it's a great, transcript. Let me see. Click here. Transcript. Okay.
What are you doing? Okay. Here. Stone's transcript.
Yep. I'm sending it to you on the. There you go. Check the Zoom chat. By the way, everyone, thank you for sticking along this entire time. I know usually we read more of your comments. Let's scroll down a bit. Okay. Let me see. Keep scrolling down a bit if it's all right. Okay, here we go. So the interviewer is K, by the letter K, and the person being interviewed is Clifford Stone by C. Let me see. Now, what was your title? A clerk? I understand that was a cover story. Is that correct? And Mr. Stone says you actually had a real life in the military. You had an actual mission. The only time that this other stuff came into play was when they had a UFO incident that was to occur, and you were in the immediate area of that. I can tell you in 1965 in Vietnam, there was a base camp there that tried to open fire on a UFO. At the very minute they tried to do that, none of their weapons worked. All the electricity went out and and remained so until after the UFO left. I can tell you from being in Vietnam for 4 years, yes, it was 4 years. The records reflect 37 months, but if you add up the time of TDY that I was over there, it was right at 4 years, TDY being temporary duty. Not having the power on anything is very, very scary. And those were very, very tense moments. I could certainly see that. As a communicator, were you called that just in terms of your military life? From what age did you start working in this capacity, would you say? He goes probably about 19 or 20. Let's see. When it comes to people who do interfacing, there is no school for that. This is in 2006, guys, by the way. So even in 06, if we had been reading this transcript back then, I would dare to argue a lot more of us would be like, come on, you really. Anyways, when it comes to people who do interfacing, there's no school for that. There were things that went on in your life. When I got out there, were 7 people that were still in the military that did interfacing, only 7, and that was military wide. And I was put into an incident where we had a situation that we weren't told exactly where it was, but I know that we landed at Ben Hua because when I look back, there was a sign. That's where we landed. Ben Hua, he goes, that's in Vietnam. I know it was because Ben Hua, I know it was Ben Hua because it was the same when I went back. Now, this was an incident that occurred. Was it a crash or was it a visit? Clifford Stone says we saw the entities. He also said this involved us going in and trying to extract an aircraft, and we did. We cut it up into, I think, about 7 pieces. Okay, was it one of theirs? No. This was a B-52. Okay, that didn't crash normal. Was it a time travel experiment? Nope, this was a craft that was shot down. Everybody was killed on. Everybody was dead on board the B-52. Shot down by the visitors. They were on a bombing mission over, I have no way of knowing this, but I would assume they were on a bombing mission over North Vietnam. He referred to not knowing about the bombing in North Vietnam. The damage to the craft was as a result of anti-aircraft fire at the B-52. The damage was that type was used for conventional bombing. And where I said that we went from there by helicopter, but it was just like some giant hand had grabbed the plane out of midair and just set it on the jungle floor. And that's what we were interested in. We didn't know. You were not told. When we got on the plane in the States to leave to go over there, we were told we were going to Florida. When we landed in Oakland, we knew that we were not going to Florida, but then we went ahead and we were given a little plastic bag. Here we go. You had to cut U.S. Army off. You had to cut your name tag off. One thing you never do is take your dog tags off. We even had to take those off. Every item that could identify you went into that plastic bag. That was held for us there at Ben Hua. That was held for us there until we came back. After that event occurred, they put me in this a tent. There was a table there. There was a chair. There was a pad. There was, I think, a couple of pens. I grabbed a pencil. I was to sit there and just put down my thoughts. Now let's scroll down a little bit more. Keep going. Anyways, he basically keeps scrolling down more, Camden. That's cool. He basically talks about how he's writing things he didn't even know that he knew, stuff like that. Okay, here we go. I always let's see. You don't always tell. You don't always. Okay, let's stop it right there. Yeah, you don't always tell the others what's going on. Remember it. Remember, I told you. You feel it. Yes, you feel what they feel, and they feel what you feel. That's what the interviewer said. Clifford Stone says you don't always address it because one of the things that you may feel like, if they're saying that they are a guest, if our military is saying, well, this is one of our guests, they're not treating that entity as a guest, then what is happening is that you are feeling what that entity is feeling. And in Clifford Stone goes, one situation, I even helped one of them escape. And that right there was, he laughed. I'm not telling everything that was being said, but he goes, well, I don't know whether it was a Stargate or what, but in order on the inside where we had this entity, if it were to, and there's a tape that talks about this, which gives a whole lot more detail. Now, I just want to give some context to you folks, because I did watch the interview. Basically the military had an ET trapped, essentially. Let's see, but we went ahead, and if they were trying to extract this entity from inside where we were at, then there'd have been people killed, and this entity would not accept that, and you could feel what it felt. That's the best way to put it. This is interesting. You essentially, what he's saying here, an extraterrestrial is trapped by humans. It needs to just get outside of that building so it can communicate telepathically with its craft to beam it up, but it refuses. It told Clifford Stone mentally, because Stone wanted to help it escape, allegedly. It refused to let any humans die, even though humans were keeping it trapped. That must either that's a really good person, or you must have some high esoteric advanced knowledge to not want, others that you, in theory, at least relative to us, perceptive to us, would not care about. Let's scroll down a little bit more. Oh, here's how we got him out. Because he was an interfacer. He basically told Clifford Stone, he goes, Stone told everyone, all the other employees in the room, you guys got to get out. He has to show me something, just him. And then let's see. By the time they found out, we had the entity outside the perimeter. They went ahead and were very upset, and were even to the point when they tried to shoot the entity, but the entity was now in a position where there was a bright light that just came down. And I didn't get to see the craft. Maybe it was because I just wasn't looking. But all of a sudden, the entity was there, then it wasn't. Then, of course, this guy I called the colonel, he went ahead and told me that I could be court-martialed. And then he said, we're going to overlook it this time, but don't let it happen again. And of course, I was chastising him. If they're supposed to be our guests, why were we treating them cruel and treating them as prisoners? As a matter of fact, even worse than prisoners. I've never seen either movie of the Manchurian Candidate. And the one thing that we had identified by the time I got out 57 different species. They were affectionately called Heinz 57. I understand there was a phrase in one of those movies. Now, again, this is when Mr. Stone goes on to talk about how he says, like, listen, these things they have less rights on Earth than animals do relative to our legal system. So again, let's scroll down a bit more. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. Gee, I love to say there was only 1 or 2 or 3 races, only 4 or 5 or even 1. I love to say that, but with what I know, if I change anything that I do know, then it's not reality. It's just going ahead and saying things that people want to hear. The interviewer says, well, why would you say you would want to say there was only 1 or 2? Stone says, well, some people would say, we could find your story more believable if you would say, gee, can't this entity be gray because it'd be more believable? And then Stone says, what do you want? A story that's believable, or do you want the truth? And I respect him, because this is what he says here. The truth may not fit what you believe, but it's the truth as I know it. And with it being the truth as I know it, that's all I can tell. That I have a lot of respect for. The truth as he knows it. Not, oh, this is it. This is absolutely it, right? So have you ever, I'm going to assume they must photograph these beings, right? Stone goes, there's pictures, yeah, photographs. Interviewer goes, and what about you? Do you ever draw them? Yada, yada. Do you have drawings? He goes, I've got some drawings. Have you ever distributed them? No. Are you able or at liberty to give them out at all or show them? Some I have and some I haven't. And are you familiar with the underground bases? And Stone replies, and the technology that comes with it. In the video, he does nod. Okay, and so I'm going to assume you've been to underground bases yourself. Not by choice. Not by choice. Okay, that's believable. But have you also seen, say, reptilians, what's called, in the UFO community, what we call reptilians? This is interesting. If we scroll down a bit, Clifford Stone says, let's see here. Some species could be called reptilian, yes. And are you able to communicate with them telepathically? Stone says they can communicate with you. It's hard to explain. You can't keep secrets. The other thing I would remind everyone is that the program, talking about the black ops compartmentalized stuff, the program is geared and set up to where you only know what you have a need to know. And a lot of times you know more than what you're supposed to know, but you don't know everything. And I reiterate that anyone who tells you they know everything is a liar. It's not true. I'm not saying I believe that, folks. I subscribe to that concept, however, because I would dare to argue it's possible the ones at the very top are the aliens. So they've compartmentalized it right to the top. Maybe you can count on your hand how many humans maybe know all of it. Let's see here. Do you have a special alien friend that have remained with you throughout, that you are with today communicating? He goes, I mentioned one. Let's see here. His name is Corona. Do you know what planet he's from? What?
Just that his name's Corona.
Oh, Corona. Oh, yeah. And he goes, I know it is about, do you know what planet he's from? I know it's about 100 light years away from here, because I always use that as an example. Real time. Could you scroll down a bit, please? Real time from the time they leave. And there's a little nice thing about that. From the time they leave their home planet, which is in a star system about 100 light years from planet Earth, in real time travel, it is an hour and 40 minutes from the time they leave and the time they arrive here. That's marvelous. What craft do they use? Do they teleport through space, or do they actually take a craft? Because not all of them, again, different propulsions, different sets of advancements of these civilizations and factions. Clifford Stone says it's a craft. They're really traveling, but it's through what we call a traversable wormhole. Interesting that just now in the recent months, quote unquote, science has suggested, I say that with air quotes, that, traversable wormholes could be possible. And have you ever gone with them? He says, to the best of my knowledge, no. He says this, and he says, and the reason I state that, I can remember seeing the stars that I've never seen them like that anywhere on Earth. But to the best of my knowledge, no. It's possible he went to other planets and his memory was wiped.
Other places in space, he says.
Or other places in space, yeah. And what's interesting too about all of this is that we have the Project Beta document to potentially corroborate that. They chip you, you don't remember a thing. You might remember maybe nowadays because the mass consciousness is ascending more and more in hypnotic regression, things like this. But let's see here. So you don't have conscious memory is what you mean of these incidents, but you could have. Stone says there have been some things that are really scary that's happened in my life. I mean, you feel it. You actually feel the fear before you actually see the entity. Scroll down a bit. Let's see here. So a person like you, we would think that you would not be afraid because you're so conscious of your interaction with these beings that I'm surprised to hear you say that you're actually afraid. Are you afraid to this day, or are you talking in past tense? When I have these incidences happen, you still have that fear. I mean, that's fear there, even more so because you can feel the fear they have. We're a very dangerous species. So you better believe it. They fall into our hands. There is that fear. Okay, so, and this is part of the reason why I'm going to assume they approach you as a communicator or interfacer, as you call it, right? Now, this is interesting. He goes, well, they're very concerned about our well-being. And a lot of people say that can't be so. We've done terrible things to ourselves, and they know this. And they're trying to understand certain things about us. And I think at the same time, they're exchanging information saying, hey, here's what you have done to yourself. I think that ties in a lot with some of the abductions that have taken place. I think it ties in with some of the cattle mutilations that have taken place. And I think it ties in with some of the people absolutely disappearing off the face of the earth. The interviewer then says, okay, so there are people that are disappearing on a regular basis, right? And then Clifford Stone says, oh, yes. And then scroll down a bit, please, Camden. Interviewer goes, and they're going to other planets. They're going to off-world bases, I'm assuming. Clifford Stone goes, I don't have the answer to that. If you were asking me if I could have left here, possibly. But like I say, there's a purpose, and I don't know what that purpose is. Okay. This is interesting because, again, we can connect this back to the alleged slave labor in Antarctica. It's possible that people are being disappeared and used for that, for mining operations on the moon, on Mars, you name it. But with that being said, I did want to read here the comment from Blank Space saying there's something weird happening in Texas right now. There's this giant ball of light wobbling in the air as we speak. I'm filming it and I'm saying, oh, perfect. Yeah, please. Thank you, Blank Space. I'd love to put it up. Stone also mentions if we brazen through it that he's heard about the treaties but never seen one if it was ever enshrined on paper. This is where he says it too. Well, I'll tell you this. I think that by 2016, that something better have happened with respects to the treaties. Wow. This is cool too. Take a look at this. I think because in 2016, I think that we're going to have to announce to the world that there's a probe that comes, obviously this didn't happen, but that comes very close to the Earth every 15 or 20 years. And we've been calling it an asteroid. It's not an asteroid, but in actual reality, it is an artificial probe. In other words, somebody else put it there. They found us a long time ago. The technology will probably be better, be pretty much on par to say Voyager. It'll be old, antiquated technology by all of their standards. So what are you saying? Is this probe, do you know what race? He goes, I'm saying we already found it. Our paradigm says it can't be artificial craft. Therefore, we refuse to accept that we call it an asteroid. I'm talking about BG1991, roughly 30 meters in diameter, highly polished surface. Asteroids don't have a highly polished surface. It took corrective course changes to avoid collision with another asteroid. That don't happen. This one, it did. So what race, is this from? From what planet? Do you know? I don't know, he says. Do you think, the interviewer goes, do you think that the aliens have given you an upgrade, have modified your DNA in any way? Are you aware that your abilities have been augmented or have grown? He goes, yeah, but you try not to use those because you can. You know of things that are going to happen before they happen. And a lot of times you can't do anything to change them. Like I knew that, didn't know who, but I knew one of my kids was going to get killed on a motorcycle. And that's hard. I mean, before my son was killed on the Wednesday prior to that, I knew that he parked the motorcycle in the back of the car. I knew I could go ahead and back up over it and run over it a couple times. But I also knew the family would not understand that I did that to stop with what was, let me rephrase it, as an attempt to stop what I knew was going to happen. So you're a precog, the interviewer says. I mean, this is what they call a precog. You know in the future before it happened. Let's see. You were not able to necessarily change or stop it, but there's a reason why things happen. I mean, you must agree. Okay, so this is interesting. Clifford Stone says, well, like I say, with them, they can even communicate with what we call the other side. But even at that, given their advanced technology, there are still forbidden questions. I'm trying to avoid something here. Let's just say that with the death of my son, they helped me visit him one time. Scroll down a bit more, Cam, if that's cool. Like I told you, there are questions unless you ever ask. It was, I knew if I go back 15 minutes, I knew where he was, all those locations. If I could go back 15 minutes, I could stop the accident from happening. He's saying about having his son be killed. All I had to do was delay his movement anywhere along that 15 minutes for just a minute or so, and I would alter the outcome. Then the interviewer goes, but, and Clifford Stone says, but once again, there's that break off. Here's our reality. He gestures with one hand. Here you create that other parallel. And for some odd reason, it's not good to create that other parallel. And they know this, referring to the aliens. Also, it was pointed out that you cannot escape the reality of this time continuum that we find ourselves, because his death is reality to me in this time frame I find myself. The Second World War happened. I must return to the point from which I depart within that space time. I'm not going to remain in the, oh my God, this makes sense. I'm not going to remain in the other one. And a lot of people, like I said the other night, would stay there. No, because it was pointed out to me quite clear, and I can't explain this. I couldn't go and debate it scientifically, but it's a natural barrier, which is why with time travel, when we discover it in our future, we're not going to find evidence of it being left any place along the line, because of that natural barrier. We may even see them, but we may even see them, we may sense them, we may even be able to interact to a degree, but nothing associated with the future tied with the day we discover time travel is going to be left in any altered reality. They say, okay, time travel hasn't happened yet because we would have evidence of it. There won't be any evidence left. And there's a natural barrier there. The whole situation is we are part of something greater, more vast, and we're on an adventure, and we are a part of that adventure. Again, the interviewer asks, do you see any of these other beings in physical states, in altered states, you name it? They're physical as you and I. Some would be telepathic. Some could talk like you and I. Again, I find this quite peculiar with what he said about timelines. Your timeline is not going to be altered relative to the day you were born and came onto this, not planet, but in this reality, if you will. Therefore, there may be a different one where something happens separately. It's confusing, but I could see how it makes sense. Anyways, folks, we've been what's it called? Going on, I think, about 2 hours here. Yeah, we've been for 2 hours. Let's check I'll read through some of the comments myself. But other than that, we're probably gonna wrap it up. My throat's kind of getting to me now too. Yeah, wow, guys, amazing chat. Holy cow. Born General says, if humans got problems with aliens, maybe they're the problem. I couldn't agree more. Mr. Gunnut, Scott, Omwama, or Omoma, I don't know how you say it, but yes, Dr.
I think that's what the asteroid probe thing is named, is what
could very well be. Yeah, could very well. It wouldn't surprise me. Yep. Dojo says, I would ask them to take me to their world. I would too. I really would. The question is, though, seriously, like, if I'm not coming back, I would just have to, I genuinely say, like, bye to everybody and say, like, can I somehow connect with, they probably wouldn't let me, but I'd say, could I get some kind of internet connection once a week? You want to give me something, let's see. Chelsea says, so interesting. A lot of people who never met have the same stories or experiences. Yes. Dan, did get your email. Yep. Gonna reply to it shortly. Just been going through so many. Let's see. Jen Nils pointed this out for me. Thanks, brother. Jen, is the name Council of One. I've seen a diagram of a Council of One who were aliens, etc., dark beings, and underneath them were the secret society branches, and below that was the government. In my opinion, I think that Earth is far less. I do Council of One. Again, whether it's a Council of One, the Committee of 300, you name it, whether it's things that we know now to be Trilateral Commission, Council of Foreign Relations. Again, I get laughed at, but I have no problem with stating in my personal beliefs at the moment, there's an extraterrestrial influence at the highest levels, which is why we see now the head of the DNI saying things like, she said the word extraterrestrially and attended events that 3-4 years ago, any government official, let alone the head of the DNI, would have even attend. I think they're being pushed. I really do. Again, here's the thing. I also think that Earth, honestly, is literally like a playground. in a lot of regards. We're organized, but not organized enough. And so you got one faction, messing with some humans in Brazil. You got another faction doing this and that. And I'm talking before the Greada Treaty. The Greada Treaty was still a deceitful treaty, in my opinion, but it helped. It was more of an organized deceit, let's call it, or organized deception, rather than just, hey, we're just going to pick up a bunch of bodies here and there, whatever, right? Let's see here. Oh, Zen Wen, no problem at all. No worries at all. Hold on. Views says the link didn't work. Oh crap.
That's why I messed with the code some and like made it more viewable for y'all. You have to go to advanced settings. I said it in the chat too. You have to go to advanced settings and then choose to proceed to the web page, because it is a unsecure web page. They just haven't updated their servers. Blah 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 blah. Whatever it is, it does work. You just gotta work for it.
Oh hey, Karma Doc, what's going on?
Brandon Alexis, Thomas came in. I see you. Expanding reality. Thanks, man.
Oh,
thanks
no way,
watching.
sweet.
Yeah.
Brandy Renee says timeline shifts make me feel dizzy. Yeah, that's why I stopped talking about it. Chelsea jumping timelines. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, this is let's see here.
Wow.
God had 509 says God had rulers, watchers, Mount Herman, Zeus, and the Olympians. Higher entities have always been here. Yeah, I agree. I fully do agree in terms of there always being something here. It's and I don't know for certain if it was the Black Knight satellite that Clifford Stone was referring to, but it wouldn't surprise me. Again, it seems like the general timelines are always fairly on point. But the other thing too is that when Clifford Stone said, by 2016 something's got to happen, he mentioned in another interview, he said 16, 17 something's got to happen. The thing is, the way allegedly it's constantly how can I explain it? It's constantly the routes and the narratives of the way in which disclosure is going to occur are constantly changing. Clifford Stone also said in that same interview, the one we just looked at, he goes, it's not going to be like a craft landing on the White House front lawn. It's not going to be a craft landing in the middle of the city of London in the UK or New York City or Tokyo. It's going to be, he didn't say, but I don't think it's interesting. Again, it's all about shifting that perception. Let's
while we're still live, give a shout out to Timcast, because he's got Joe Rogan, Alex Jones, Blair White, and Michael Malice all live with him right now. That's kind of fucking rad.
Timcast has all those guys live.
Yeah, Tim Pool's got Joe Rogan, Alex Jones, Blair White, Michael Malice, and Drew H all live with him. That's kind of fucking dope.
Holy crap. Wow. That's a great ensemble right there. Let's see here. All right. Elliot Briggs. The full video will be here. Yeah, it'll be here. This whole stream, you could play it back. Yes.
I think I made it so you can watch the chat again too. Not that it was very focused on our content today, but
Yeah. Well, anyways, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out. It was a great time, great stream. I hope that we were able in the chat and even on here to, learn, analyze, debate a little bit back and forth, you name it. And we will catch everybody tomorrow. We just dropped a new members only episode for the members, a 35-minute one, roughly, something like that. And
if you count the videos at the beginning and end, it was like 45 minutes.
Oh, never mind then. Okay, even better. 45-minute, having to do with the stuff we can't discuss here, obviously, and things like with Astro World, you name it.
It was a really good Astro World investigation. We'll call it an investigation. You did a good job, Dave. That was dope.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. But anyways, that's about it, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out, and we'll probably do another stream this weekend. You guys know how we are with this stuff, always trying to find more creative, fun things to look at. So other than that, everybody, thank you so much, and we'll catch you soon.